Hello, it's Zed here, and in this video I'm going to be explaining inputs in Python. Now an input is a way for the user to assign their value to a variable. And in the previous video we saw that a variable is an identifier which you, the programmer, is assigning a value to. So in this case, num will equal 5. And now num has the association with 5. We can treat num as if it were 5. So if we were to print num, we will be printing 5. And if we were to do something with num, so let's say divided by 2, we will be doing 5 divided by 2. However, this isn't always useful. Sometimes we want the user to enter the number and then we'll do something with that. So how will we go around doing that? Well, input. In Python, we will write input straight up. And this signifies that whatever is going to go in this brackets is what the user wants. And to explain to the user what you want to be added in, you can use speech marks. You technically don't need to put speech marks. You don't need to do anything here. You can literally leave it like this and it will work. In fact, you can literally do that. Then once you print a num, it will be whatever the user inputs it. So if nothing appears here. And that's the problem, because I'm like, okay, what do I enter? Let me enter this. And yeah, it works, but you can see that's not very useful. So by adding speech marks, we can tell the user, enter a number. My thing was on caps, so I'm just going to leave it like that. And what this happens is you can actually see enter number here. And then this tells the user, okay, I'm supposed to enter number. So 5.5 is a number. And 5.5 is outputted. And this is really good because you can get a user input and then do calculation with it and output it. So let's say if we're going to do num divided by 2 for whatever reason. Alright, and the user says, okay, I want to enter 10. I want to see what 10 divided by 2 is. Ever. Why do you think that is? It's because the thing about inputs is that they're always taking a string. Even though we entered 10, it takes it in as a string. Now, in the last video, what can you use from the last video that can help maybe fix this issue? Well, at first you might think, okay, so num equals int num. I did something similar like in the last video, and yeah, this would work. It would just work perfectly fine. Just doing 5 divided by 2, 2.5. However, the thing about inputs is you don't need to do this. You can, over here, you can do int input, and this essentially gets this line and converts it into this line. It makes it all nice and compact, and it's still easy to read as well. So now if we do it, let me enter 2 divided by 2 is 1. Perfect. Now as you can see, the output is a float, not an integer. How might you fix that? In the previous video, you saw that to convert something into another thing, the set of words, so int will be 1, or float will be 1. This is the one we'll be using. And there are others like bool and stuff like that. And to convert num back into an integer instead of a float number, we wouldn't do print statement. We'd have to reassign num. So this gives us the calculation that we want, and we would want to convert this back into an integer. So it will literally, so we could do num equals int num, but then this is kind of lengthy, so it works, but it's kind of long. So we could do 3. It's perfectly fine. However, if we do this int, it removes this line of code. In Python, you can treat it as if it was maths. In maths, there's something called BODMAS or BIDMAS or PEDMAS or whatever acronym you use. And the idea that brackets come first, and whatever is in the brackets, you do that, then whatever out of brackets, you can add it on. And it's the same thing here. You do the brackets first, and in the brackets, you do number divided by 2, and that outputs a float. And here, you get the float and say, no, you're an integer now. Don't care what you think, you're an integer. and now number is an integer. And we can check that by doing by doing print type num. And you can see it is an integer. Now, what if we wanted to get a user input, do a calculation, and output it back as a string? Now, we saw previously you couldn't just get the user input as a string because then you couldn't do a calculation with it. Well, there are a couple of ways to do this, and one way is to receive a user input, so be num equals input integer input. This could also be a float, but it's fine. And then you just do enter a number, if I can spell a number correctly. We can do the calculation here, so it'd be num equals num divided by 2, let's say. And we can convert this back into a string. And to do that, we could do the same way as we did with an integer like this, but with a string instead. So we did the calculation first, and then we converted it back into a string. So if I enter 4, no error, that means that num is now being assigned to a string value of 4. And we could do this with a couple of stuff like boolean. If I print out the number so we can actually see what's happening. Now remember, boolean is only a true or false. So if I enter 1, it's going to be true. If I enter minus that, it's going to be true. But if I enter 0, it's going to be false. It will be a good way to verify if a user has entered anything, and if they haven't entered anything, you could do an if statement or a try except thing to get them to enter the right thing. Otherwise, boolean is kind of useless. And really what I'm trying to get at here is, in the last video, how we use typecasting, where we convert one to another. You can do the exact same thing with an input. All you need to do is make sure if you're going to do calculation, you're not doing it against a string. And if you want an intended output, you can just convert it by doing the same way you do typecasting, by doing string like this, or by doing integer like this, or float even like this. Like how we did with the last video, you can use f strings just the same. You take an user input, and this is just to show that you can actually put string here. It's redundant because it's automatically string, but it works. And using an f string, you can assign whatever the user entered into the statement. So if I'm going to run this code, what's my name? Well, my name is blah. Hello, my name is blah. I like tanks and cheese. It works just the same. And you can also manipulate this. We're going to explain this more in a future video when I start talking about lists and for loops and all of that fancy stuff, where you can get a slice. It is called string slicing, where you get a certain part of a string. So in this case, let's if I actually did enter blah. String slicing would literally be 0, 1, 2, 3. And I can say, okay, get the first 2. So it'd be 0, 1, 2. So it'd be blah instead of the H. However, that is for a later video. And other than that, this really is it with inputs. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.